Now, Elvina will be driving the presentation for us today. Elvina is one of our senior information value strategists, and will take us on a deep dive into ClickSense today, which will be fantastic for everyone to see. From a logistical perspective, just a couple of notes. We do have a lot to cover today, but we also have the opportunity to answer some questions that you may have. What I'd ask is at the bottom of your presentation screen, you have the opportunity to type in a question. And what we'll do is at the end of the session, we'll wrap up and come back to those questions and answer them as we go. Anything that we can't answer or we don't have time to answer, we'll also send out the answers to you later on after the session. We will have a recording of the session published as well. So while you can happily take notes, you will also get a copy of the session that you can look at again. One last item, we have a special offer at the end of the presentation today, so please make sure you stay right to the end to hear that offer. And on that note, when we do finish the presentation, there will be a little pop-up screen as you exit out. There will be a couple of questions there for you that you can answer just as you finish up, which would be great. So without any further ado, I shall hand over to Elvina to take us on a journey through ClickSense. Thanks, Elvina.
But just before we start, let me spend a couple of minutes just talking a little bit more about why the platform like this is actually required. It's no surprise to anyone on this call that the mobile technology has changed the way we're accessing and using information. A recent survey has just showed us that on average Australian household has at minimum 5 mobile devices at home. And when you actually look at around, you look at how many mobiles and tablets we have as an individual person, that's not a surprising thing. So that obviously has changed the way how we access information on personal life. But even more now these days, this is not just limited mobile device use. The tablets and mobiles are not limited to our personal life anymore. Most IT departments have started relaxing their rules and allowing people to bring their own mobile device at work. So when we come into work, we're expecting a similar type of access to the information using our mobile device. The challenge there is that over the course of the time, we accumulate quite a lot of information around our business. On average, the information that is actually capable of being analyzed grows, doubles every couple of years. So there is a challenge in there, how you can connect your mobile device and access that information and use it. And we all know that these days, everyone's talking that information is the key competitive advantage of every business. And if information is the key competitive advantage of every business, it makes sense to provide that information, enable access to more users in the organization, because more users have access to information, more ideas you're going to get, more innovations, and you'll discover more business opportunities to improve your business. But the challenge is still how to do that. In the past, it was quite difficult. So standard traditional business intelligence solutions have been providing information just to a limited number of people. Those solutions are complex, it's a bit hard to design and develop. So we will basically provide information to a selected few, and then they will be translating and giving that information to everyone else in our organization. About 20 years ago, QlikView has started a new product called, or Qlik company started a new product called QlikView. And their objective was to try to minimize that gap between the information and the business users. So they came up with this platform called QlikView, which allows us to build powerful performance applications that can be actually built and published for our business users. And the business users can then work with that data, entire data sets are unrestricted by the designers, slice and dice, search, collaborate. And that's all great, but even an organization like that still have a number of users there whose needs are not met. And these are the people we all know that are actually running multiple reports, collecting their own data from different sources, mashing them all up, and most often in Excel, and then creating their own analysis and doing their own insights. The problem there is that because that individual analysis that is not easily shareable, easily secured, we end up with a large number of mission-critical applications that are developed in Excel. We have multiple versions, and when the people leave the company, we can't actually utilize that knowledge application anymore. And this is exactly where ClickSense actually fits in. ClickSense is designed for a mobile device use, so it's designed for a mobile perspective first of all. It is designed to be simple, to empower every single business user to basically connect with data, mash it up, and then visualize it and understand it for their own purposes. But at the same time, it ensures security, it ensures the server-based development, it provides the functionality and features that will allow us to enforce the governance and reusability and standards. So just to recap, for those that actually already have QlikView, it's a great platform. It is actually using the build and publish model. What that really means is it's an in-the-box application platform which allows somewhat technical users to design and build applications for other people to use. Those other people have access to those applications using the mobile devices. If they choose to, they can slice and dice. They have lots of flexibility. However, if they do want to mesh up their own data, develop their applications from scratch, then the support for those users is limited. And that's where ClickSense fills in. It actually fills that gap, and it is build and use model. So it allows business users to create applications, visualize them, and then share that information with the rest of the organization in a secure server environment where, as I mentioned, there is a security and governance. Both QlikView and ClickSense are the products on its own right. So you can use one or the other. What's quite interesting is because there are different types of users in our organization, and one size does not always fit all. You do have option to actually implement this side by side. An advantage though there is that both applications or both platforms are actually built on the same engine. And in there, what that really means is that you can use all this hardware that goes into connecting to different data sources across enterprise, meshing it all up, translating, consolidating, and then you can basically push the users to the different users, push the information to the different user categories using the most appropriate platform, being it more QlikView for a more guided analytical applications, or being it ClickSense for a more ad hoc, self-service and free-flowing analysis for a business user. So that's the main difference between those two platforms. There's just the way they've been used and the needs that they're filling in. But that's enough of our slides. So let's have a quick look at what the ClickSense looks like. Okay, so I can access my ClickSense application just by going to a browser using either my tablet or my desktop here, and I can just basically type in the website and I can get an access to my ClickSense hub, as they call it. As you can see here, I can create new applications. This interface looks pretty much the same as the free QlikView Desktop. So for those that have installed and used QlikView Desktop, the capabilities that I can do within my server are exactly the same as per Qlik Desktop. I can do anything I can do with the desktop in here. The main difference is that any work that I do is centrally stored on a server, ClickSense server, and it is visible and manageable by administrators. So they can actually secure it, they can share it, and they can take ownership if I, for example, leave the company. The other difference that full ClickSense product has compared to the ClickSense Desktop is on the left side here you can actually see that I have a couple of different sections. These are called streams. And streams are pretty much containers when we do publish ClickSense applications, when we share them with the rest of the organization. And each stream can actually have a separate set of permissions. Users and groups of users are assigned to the streams and applications, and different people can have different permissions as well based on the role they're assigned to. So, for example, some people that have access to everyone's stream might have just a read access to executive dashboard here. Others might be able to read and write, so they can modify things, and a third set of users might be able to publish things and share it with other users. So you can go very granular around the security here. So how do I work with ClickSense? Well, I just basically click on one of the applications and I can open it up, and it's just going to open up on a browser for me. So another difference here between working with the ClickSense full product and the desktop is when I open my application, I notice that I have my sheets. And so the ClickSense application is a collection of analytical sheets, bookmarks, and storylines, and we'll actually see each of those and what they are. But I can see here when I'm looking at my analytical sheets that I have them classified into 3 different categories. So I have approved sheets, and those are the ones that have been looked at and published by a ClickSense administrator and has the right to publish this stream. Then I have this area here, which is a more, it's a common area, it's like a community area. These are the sheets that the users have modified and created themselves and then shared with the rest of the organization. And then I have an area where it's just a mine sheet, and these are the ones that are only accessible by me. So how do I go about using the ClickSense application? I can start my analysis from any sheet I want. So I can start from the middle here, and I'm just opening up the sales analysis. As I mentioned before, ClickSense is really built for mobile devices. What that really means is all the objects and all the presentation side of the ClickSense has a smart scaling technology. So if I am accessing this application, as you can see, I'll just minimize my screen, and I'm accessing this application from a smaller screen. So you can see things are just automatically rearranged. That will make transition of this application between desktop, web browser, mobile device, and mobile phone quite seamless. So that is the big advantage of we don't actually get the crowded screens in there. There are quite a lot we can do with the ClickSense application someone else built for us. So as you can see here at the top, I do have some filters in there, so I can go and pick up one. So if I click on a filter region, I have a list of my regions here. If I pick a specific region, you might notice that I get a preview of what my analytical sheet will look like if I make this selection. I haven't accepted it yet, but I can actually see how the rest of the objects will interact and what have to behave if I filter my data by specific region. I can pick up another region if I want at the same time or deselect. So I have a chance to accept my selection after I preview it, or I can cancel it, and I have some other options in here, for example, if I want. So I'm just going to go and accept my specific selection. Now that I accepted my selection, what actually happens is that entire application is now filtered by this region being Pacific. So if you notice here, I actually have my filter available in here, which I can actually go and check and change it if I want. But if I go to next sheet, accounts receivable sheet, you will notice that my selection is maintained. If I go to the next one, again, it's maintained. So again, with ClickSense, like with ClickView, as soon as we make a selection, as soon as we slice the data by a specific information, everything in that entire application is responsive to that. It's actually everything is applied to that. But I can make my selections many other ways. So I can easily make a selection of any of the charts by along the axis, for example. As you can see here, again, I'm getting the previews and seeing how the information will look like if I make that selection. If I am disabling my region, for example, and I'm using the scatter chart, I have ability to make a selection across both axes. So for example, I can do it this way, and I can see that I'm looking for margin between 37 and 48%, and I'm looking at the revenue between just over around 6 million and over 11 million. And I can also do and move things around and actually have a bit of preview and seeing how things look like. And if you notice, as soon as I move my filters, I get a preview how information looks like. This is just a quick worldwide introduction of how you can navigate information within ClickSense. A couple of other ways we can actually slice and dice information. Now when we build a ClickSense application from scratch, search is automatically added. And with ClickSense, we can actually search across every single field in our data. So for example, if I start looking for coffee, I get some suggestions on what my spelling should be. And I also get suggestions on field names where that information would actually be relevant for me to filter by. But I can actually start searching across for more than one value. So I'm looking for a coffee in Europe. And if I do that, and I press enter, as you might notice that ClickSense has automatically deducted that I'm looking for a region Europe, and I'm looking at the product subcategory coffee and giving me basically filtered information based on that selection. I can easily remove some of these selections if I want, or reapply them back again if I want. So you can go backwards and forward. If I don't have all these filters, again, by default, when I build ClickSense application, all the fields that I have in my data model are available for me by default to make selections. So if I go in my main filters area, I can see my current selections. And as you have noticed as well in here, I do have my green, gray, and white, which basically the green identifies my current selections, what I have selected. What's grayed out is what's not relevant to my selection, and what is and the information that is actually in white is what's relevant to my selection. So I also have a different shade of gray in here as well, and Qlik Sense is actually giving me an extra layer of the relation between my data. So what that tells me is that, you know, in Middle East we actually don't sell coffee whatsoever. So the shade of gray is it's a bit stronger than with the rest of the regions where we do sell coffee, but because I've selected Europe as well, they're not relevant to my entire selection. So that gives me a bit more information to work with. So quite easy to select and slice and dice, as you can see, using multiple ways of looking at the information. So if we are going and looking through the information, looking through the facts, we might want to potentially make a record of some of our selections because we might visit them later on. And this is what bookmarks are for. The bookmarks will actually store our selection information, and then we can call it a bit later. So for example, if I click on my sales analysis lower margin, as you can see, my selection automatically applies and I get a view. The bookmarks are generally a good way of actually creating a different perspective, different views of our information that we might want to revisit later on. Even more, once I'm doing this analysis, we actually generally want to share our knowledge with our colleagues. We want to take this individual analytical step into the more collaborative process as well. And this is where the snapshots and storytelling comes into. So if I, for example, click on this camera icon in here, this enables me to take a snapshot of each of those charts. What that will actually allow me to take a snapshot of the data and the chart at a specific point of time. By taking a snapshot is just by, as you can see here, I have a few, and I can just click once more to take another one. Why would I take a snapshot? Well, the snapshot is actually used so we can build the stories around our findings. And the stories, as you see here, we'll look at an approved one, are basically just a combination of the snapshots that we've taken together with some text and visual effects where we can highlight our findings and share it with other users. So for example, here we have a bit of we got the title here, we got some text that explains, with some pointers that actually point to the right information around our high margin sales. And we can actually move through the stories and have a discussion with the rest of the team and our colleagues around our finding. But it is much more than just a simple presentation like PowerPoint presentation. Because when we're having these discussions, people might be actually asking questions. They might be questioning that some of the findings in my story, they might not be correct, or they might want to actually investigate it further. At any point of time, I can right-click on any of the snapshots and go back to the source. And ClickSense will take me back to my ClickSense application, to my data, where I can then start looking at information. So if I, for example, bring this chart here to a full screen, I can see that indeed RFI Corporation is the one in the same place as it should have been. And I can also see that my revenue by salesperson, John Gregg, is actually selling the most across the convenience stores, as my story tells me. So I can go back to the story and coming back to it. So I can go backwards and forwards within the stories and utilize my Qlik Sense application to find different insights, discover new opportunities, and to share it with different people. So now you might be thinking, that's all great, you know, it's a really good, it's a great application, but what would it take to actually design and develop something like this? So what we're going to do is just to show you how easy it is to create one completely from scratch. So for us to start creating a new application, I have to go to my work area. So that's my personal development sandpit where I can create new applications and work with them before I can share them with everyone else. So I go to my work area and I click Create New Application. I'm prompted to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it webinar and click Create. Now when the create applications are created, basically saying you want to open it up, so I open application. I really just have here an empty container. So the first step I need to do is need to edit some data. So for my analysis here, what I want to do, I want to do some sales analysis. And I do have an access to a number of tables in our relational SQL database that my system administrator has given me access to. So that database has information around the sales, customer product sales. But with that information, I don't have the details around salespeople. So I have asked another person that, to export a list of salespeople and IDs that I want to merge with my sales information. And at the same time, I really want to do a little bit of geo-analysis and actually present my sales on a map to see on which countries I actually have a presence. I have gone to the website, to the Google website, looked at it and downloaded the countries' polygon-shaped KML files that will actually allow me to draw the shapes around the countries that I do the business with. So in this specific example, we will be sourcing the data from 3 different data sources, merging those all together, and then doing some analysis. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the data load editor, and don't get too worried about the look and feel of the data load editor. Everything is a wizard-based. What I have on the right side here, I've got the data connections. Those are the data connections, and in general in production, connections or production databases will potentially be set up by system administrator, so you don't have to remember the username and passwords, etc. But just for this example, so you can show you how easy it is, even if it's not created, we'll create one from scratch. So I'm just going to click create a new connection. My first connection is going to be SQL database, so I'm selecting an OLEDB provider, and then I'm just going to go and look at for Microsoft OLEDB provider for SQL Server. I'm going to type in the server name, and I'm going to type in the username and password that I've been given. And I'm just going to click load. The load will just basically give me a list of the databases on that server that I have access to. So this is the one that I'm after, QWT, and I am just going to click. I can change the name of my connection, so I know when I refer back to it. So I can actually save it. So now I have established a connection to my SQL database. My new connection will actually appear down here. As you can see, it's a webinar of being a sales, the one that I've just created. How I go about bringing the data in? Well, all I need to do is just click on the select data icon. And SQL database tables are actually organized in various schemas. So if you're in a doubt, you can try a couple of those until you see the tables that are actually popping out. So I'm picking up my QWT database, and now I can see all the tables that I have access to. Now I can start actually bringing the data from those tables into my application. So if I click on categories, for example here, what you will notice is ClickSense has connected to SQL Server and gave me a bit of a preview as well of the data that I'm getting. Down here, it's actually generating the load scripts that I don't really need to know, don't need to worry much about it. So I'm looking at categories and saying, okay, these are the type of fields that I want in my data. I'm going to look at my customers as well, and again, as I'm adding that, I can see the type of data that is in here, and I can make some changes here. So for example, I have here field name customer ID, but I also have a field name called company name. Maybe I want to change that to customer. Okay, so I've renamed that field on the fly. I'm just going to add the visual as well. Again, so that's all good. I can look at my order details, and I can see what type of information I actually have in there. So I want to do some analysis around the sales and margin. So I make sure I got quantity, unit price, and unit cost. I can calculate my margin from there. And I'm going to pick my orders as well. Again, I can get a little bit of a preview of the information. And I can pick up my products as well that I want from this database. And as I'm looking through the products, I've noticed that I have unit cost and unit price again in my products table. In ClickSense and ClickView, you only need a field showing in one table because the data is all connected, it's instantly available. So this is just a waste of having more than one here. I'm just going to deselect them. I'm going to go insert script. All the script is created, and I'm just going to basically instruct ClickSense to load the data. So now ClickSense is gone and basically loaded all the data and telling me everything is all fine. And my data is pretty well organized, so I can do that. So what I can also do now at this point of time is actually have a look at how my data looks like, how my data model in ClickSense looks like. And if I go to the data model viewer, what you might notice here, I've got all the tables that I've imported. What you might also notice is that all these tables are actually connected. As you can see, there are relationships between these tables. And ClickSense and ClickView do get relationships between the tables and between the data based on a field name that they have in common. So, for example, if I have imported unit price and unit cost in here, then my link to between products and all the details would be not just on a product ID, would be also on unit cost and unit price. And that's the only consideration that you need to keep in mind when you pull the data into ClickSense. You need to rename the fields that you don't want the link to another table because if you don't want to actually create incorrect link. But apart from that, everything's pretty good. And even from here, I can already start some of the data modeling. I can click on a table, and I can click on a preview. So I can actually see some information about the table, fields, and the preview data. I can click on a specific field, and as you notice in here, I can add this field as a dimension or as a measure. All the fields that I import in a ClickSense are automatically available for me to create my charts and tables when I go into application design. But advantage of creating the measures and dimensions is that we can actually calculate some things that we can reuse across multiple times, so we don't have to do the same calculations all the time. So if I click Add as a dimension, the pop-up box comes up is in here, and basically saying, okay, so you want to field called the division name. Do you want to create as a division? I'm just going to say my dimension is going to be called divisions. And if I can click on add a dimension and add another one, for example, and it does not have to be from the table I'm currently in. So I can go to customers, for example, and create a drill down dimension on location. So I can go and click drill down from country to the state, and then maybe to the city, and maybe then to customers. And you notice that the company name now is called customers for me. And I can give my dimension name customer by location. Click add dimension, and I can click done. So I can already start building my data model, but I don't have to make everything perfect before I can build. I'll show you when we switch to the application design where we can actually have ability to add extra dimensions to the measure as we go along. At this point of time, I'm going to close my data model because I only have the data from one source. What I really want is to add my salespeople in, and I also want to add my geographic information as well. Just for cleanliness reasons, I'm just going to add another tab in here, and I'm just going to now import the data from a CSV file that I have, which contains my salespeople. To do that again, because it's a different type of the system, I need to create another connection. I'm just going to scroll up and create a new connection. At this point of time, because I am pulling the data from a file, I need to create a connection to the folder where my files are. And I'm just going to select my folder. As you can see, I can navigate through my normal folders, and my source location is the webinar data source. And I can give it a name again, webinar files, for example. So now once I create connection again, the process is always the same. We first create a connection, and then we bring in the data. So I now call connection, select the data, and I have two files in here that I can import that are in this folder. First, I'm going to look at the employee CSV. And once I click select, you'll notice again I have a wizard in here with the preview of data and all the fields that I can select. So what I'm after is the salespeople. So I don't really want a first and last name. I just want a full name, and maybe I want to call it salesperson. I want to have title. I'm not interested in anything else. So I might just select all the other fields and say insert script. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to use the same connection to import my geographic information. And again, so here is my country's world KML file that I had downloaded for free from Google. I click select, and again, the ClickSense basically recognizes the file type and just translate that for me, and I can see the information here. What I can see in here, though, that in my customer table, I have a country field with the information that are countries, but in this data source here, I don't have a matching field. So what I really need to do is I need to rename, in order to this specific field within my geographic location file, to link to my customers, I need to call it the same. So I'm just going to rename this to country. and that's all I need to do. And I'm just going to reload the data. So now ClickSense is going to just reload the data and connect everything together. So now that I've reloaded the data, just a quick check again to my data model. And once I actually go there, you will notice that now I have my employees table as well. It is correctly linked to my orders by employee ID. And I also have the countries work table that is connected to my customers. So there is nothing major that I didn't have to write a piece of code. So now what we're going to do when we have some data, we're going to switch to the application design and start creating some charts and actually using the data to find the insights. And just in an essence of the time, and actually to save some time, I will switch to a pre-done data model because I've done some additional calculations, so we don't have to spend more time on that. And we'll use that from now on. But it is exactly the same data that we just created with just some extra defined measures and dimensions that I've done. So when I say open my data model, the first thing I need to do is to create a new sheet. I can give it a name and call it sales rep analysis, for example. And I can click on to open the sheet. My sheet is empty now, so I need to actually add some analysis to it. I'm going to click Edit button, and as I do, you notice here, I actually, on the left side, I have a number of charts that I can use. I can also have all the fields in my data model available for me. But because I've done some data modeling and I've actually done some, actually created a number of dimensions, you notice that here is the customer location that I've created through the data model. But also, I have created a number of measures like number of customers, number of orders, I calculated the margin after sales minus cost, etc., etc. So now I can start creating my own analysis. So if you remember, we brought in the salespeople in to our sales data, and we brought in the geographic location information. So that's the first thing I want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my dimensions. Under my dimensions, I'm going to look for a sales reps. Here is my sales rep field, and I'm just going to drag and drop it on my sheet. So that's going to be my filter. I'm just going to readjust it a little bit. It's very easy to do so. And as the next step, what I really want to do is I actually want to create a map. I want to present my sales on a world map. So I'm just going to go and drag and drop the map object to my ClickSense application. Just resize a little bit, and it says, okay, so you got an object in, I'm missing a dimension. So I'm going to click Add Dimension. And I'm just going to pick the country because that's my dimension. So if you notice here, I've kind of got some shapes of the countries that I'm making my sales in, but I don't have a full world because I'm not selling across every single country in the world. So what I want to do is I am just going to go in the background side of my chart, and I'm going to say Enable the background. And once I want to enable background, I need to put the URL to OpenStreetMap or any other free map that is available. And don't worry, you don't have to. You can click on URL and attributions, and what you're really going to get is this help file in here with the URL you just can copy and paste. And you can use any of those. You can play and see which background is actually fits you the most. So I'm just going to go and paste the URL in here. And as I do, as you notice here, now the rest of the board is suddenly showing up where actually the countries that are making the sales are still nicely highlighted. But what I really want is I would like these colors behind on my countries to be actually representing all my sales. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in my dimensions and measures, look at my measures, and make it based on sales revenue. So I'm just going to drag and drop sales revenue measure on my map table and says, okay, what do we want to do? Well, I want to add a measure. Once I add a measure, I just want to change my appearance, my colors on my map, not to be automatic, but actually to be dictated by the measure. And I can actually choose the different gradients if I want. I'll just pick up the one. And I can click and edit the title, and I can say sales by location. I can click Done. And here is my first analytical sheet in just a couple of minutes. I can easily see that my strongest sales are in Germany. And if I click on Germany, you will notice that my sales rep list is actually interacting with my selection. So I can see that these 4 people are actually making sales in Germany, but the other ones are not selling in that location. And again, I got the same presentation. I click on Canada. I can see that only Frank is selling in Canada, but no other salespeople. So my interaction is already started building. Okay, so I've created this, but I really want to do a little bit more to it. So all I do is just add a new sheet, just keep it called my new sheet, and I can start adding additional information here as well. So let's create something that we all love. It's a bar chart. So under the dimensions, so just add a category, for example, and under the measure, I can drag and drop, or I can make a selection. So maybe we'll just make sales revenue, and I can start resizing things a little bit, and I can start then playing with the appearance of that. So I can say, well, let's make my colors again based on my measure. You can organize it that way. And maybe overall, if I'm looking at my presentation, maybe I just want to invert my chart to make it look that way. And I'm just going to say category sales. Again, another chart already created. So I can go in and start adding extra analysis in here. For example, I just want to create a line chart, and in there I'm looking at the sales over time. So I'm just looking by month and a year, and under my measures, I'll pick up sales revenue again. And as you might notice here, if I actually click done, similarly, so I have a lot of data in my time dimension. So I do only see what I can see, what can fit it in a screen. But down here, Qlik Sense gives me some preview of the extra data, and I can actually scroll down to see that I do have some extra timeline here, and that my trend it varies from what I'm currently seeing. And it's a really cool thing, because with most of applications, if I accidentally drag and drop a dimension field which has large number of values, a lot of dimensional objects will actually try to fit all in one screen and make it unreadable. So now that I've started creating all these objects, I can start finding a little bit more insight. As I'm finding the insight, as before, I can create bookmarks, but at the same time, I can use my search, because everything is already available in here. All the fields are available for me to do the search on. So I can look for a sales rep, for example, and I can pick John Collins. So I've selected John Collins in here, and I might also scroll around and maybe make a selection for a specific fiscal year. So let me just make it from July 2012 to June 2012, for example. So I'm making that selection. So I'm actually finding some new information in here, and I might want to create a story around that, around the John Collins performance for fiscal year 2013. I can click on my camera icon, and I can take a couple of screenshots. So now that I have my screenshots that I want to base my data with, I'm going to go and create myself a new story that I potentially want to share with my colleagues. And in college around sales, or anything that I want, and I'm basically start creating new stories. So now I have a blank sheet of paper where I can start inserting information. So I can put a title in, and it's as simple as clicking on and actually typing in. And change the colors and fonts, etc., etc. It's as simple as that. But what I can do is I can actually go in and drag and drop my snapshot. But it is not just that I can use that. I can also use some visual effects to actually highlight a specific point on this chart. So maybe I just want to highlight the lowest value. So if I drag and drop the visual effect on this chart, as you notice, my display already changes. So I can actually see that Joanne is basically selling the least, the swimwear for this fiscal year. And again, I can then put in a paragraph in and actually start typing the information in here as well. And I can build my story from the beginning, middle to the end. Once I've done all of that, I can pretty much just save it and then publish it, share it with users in our community area as a my sheet. Or if the application is good enough to be shared across the entire organization, then it can be shared basically with the rest of the organization by administrators publishing that and make it an approved application. Simple as that. Everything that I do here, it's not stored on my local desktop. It is actually stored on a server, so I can access my work, continue working on this from anywhere I want. I can use the desktops. I can use the mobile devices. So it's really all about empowering me to access the data and work with the data anytime and anywhere. So as you can see here, ClickSense, it is an application that is really allowing the business user without any assistance from the technical people to utilize the strategies, to mash up the data, connect to the data, and then create powerful visualizations that they can utilize to find the insights and share it with the rest of the organization. So that's really, hopefully there is quite a lot to actually talk about the ClickSense, but within an hour that's all we can fit in. But hopefully you actually have realized how easy it is, and if you haven't already, go to our website and download the free Qlik Sense Desktop and have a bit of a play and find out by yourself how easy it is to use this application. Thank you very much.
So what we're going to do now is put Elzina on the spot and answer a couple of questions. So for dramatic effect, I will ask the questions and give Elzina some thinking time, and then Elzina has bravely offered to answer those questions. Now, if you do have any more questions, so some have come through already. If you do have any more questions, as I mentioned, just type them into the bottom of your GoToMeeting screen on the right-hand side there. So the first question, Elzina, is, can I open my existing QlikView application in QlikSense? So that's a very specific question there.
Yeah, so it must be a customer that already has a QlikView. So the answer is yes and no. As I mentioned before, both platforms do share the same engine. So yes, you can open your QlikView application in QlikSense. What will be converted is the data model behind the scenes, so the connections and all the load scripts and all the calculations, but you will have to redo your visualizations because QlikSense and QlikView have different objects that they use to actually visualize and present the data. But as you've seen how easy it is to do in QlikSense just by dragging and dropping, I don't expect that to be any major issue.
So the real hard work and the grunt work behind the scenes is maintained?
Generally 80% of the time when you're developing the QlikSense or QlikView applications is spent in the data modeling.
Okay, excellent. Good question. All right, we have another. Will my free Qlik Sense Desktop ever expire?
Never say never. The Qlik as a vendor though has advised that Qlik Sense Desktop will never expire. When the new version is published, you will be required to upgrade just to maintain the functionality. But the Qlik Sense Desktop, the free Qlik Sense Desktop is there, going to be there forever, and there are no limitations how long you can use it.
Okay, so as it stands right now, the answer is no, it won't expire.
That's
okay,
right.
excellent. All right, and just another question here. Why should I then need full Qlik Sense?
So why should you pay when you can use the free version?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
That's a good question. Well, Qlik Sense Desktop is really good for you to get introduced into the self-service and that analytics and actually doing your own individual analytics. But it is actually just for the individual analysis. Sharing of that information, collaboration is not as easy. Yes, you can share the files by sending your file to your colleagues. They can open it up, but then you do have danger to actually end up with the multiple versions of the same document. With the QlickSense, full QlickSense product, it is a server-side development. So as soon as you create a new application, as I did today, it is already stored on the server, so it's essentially managed, it's secured, administrators can review it, the objects that you've developed can be reused, and the standards can be applied. So the security and governance are very much present in a full QlickSense product, which is quite important for organizational-wide deployment.
Okay, so there definitely are benefits in moving to the full product. Certainly something that we could happily talk through with someone in our workshop as part of the 2-hour workshop. we'd be able to prescribe the best possible solution for that requirement.
Definitely. We can also obviously go through some of the central management features as well that Qlik has put quite a bit of investment. So there are quite a huge benefits in going with the full ClickSense product for the government and security perspective, if nothing else.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you, Elzina, for answering a few of those questions. As I said, if you have any other questions, please send them through and we can answer them for you. And we'll also share those answers with a wider audience if it's a general question that we can answer for everybody as well. I am very conscious of time. I had only a couple of jobs today. Elzina, of course, did all the hard work. I needed to make sure we start on time and finish on time. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. Really appreciate taking the time to spend with us and have Elzina take us through the Qlik Sense application. As I mentioned before, once you end the session and close it down on your desktop, a pop-up will come through where you can answer a couple of questions for us. One of those will be whether or not you'd like to take advantage of our free offer, which we would love to see you do. So thank you again and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.